Hey everybody! Welcome to Friday the 13th, the series. I'm your producer, Robert.
And I'm your guest, Jeremiah.
And after a complete, spoiler-filled recap of the episode, we are going to discuss the show you either just learned existed or always wondered how it existed. We promise the answers will be few and far between because we're just here to have some goofity fun exploring a show that, despite or possibly even because of its faults, isn't good and isn't so bad it's good, but is still somehow oddly charming. Let's dive in, shall we? And we're back. In just a moment, I and my guest, longtime friend and film industry guy, Jeremiah, are going to pick up discussing this episode right where we left off. Then we'll each share a curio of the week. I'll recap the next portion of the story, including Jerry's insane lodging situation, and then we'll continue discussing the unabating madness that is this show until we run out of time and continue next week. Full disclosure, you can still watch along with us for free on YouTube, but one of the complete playlists has mysteriously disappeared, leaving only one option. So if you'd like to see some episodes, I would suggest sooner as opposed to later. You can find a link on the Inner Demon Entertainment website. So in keeping with your thoughts that the glove sort of reaches out to him and encourages him to put it on, Stewart touching the cop's face for seemingly no reason. Is this also the glove at play? What's our headcanon on this?
Yeah, I think so. I think probably with him going through the pain, probably just breaks down into animal instinct, and animal instinct are easily guided by these powers and these forces and these evil influences.
So I need to ask you a question of something I'm sure you picked up on. Does Mickey's hair fluctuate in terms of how red it is at any given time?
Yes.
Sometimes wildly so, all the way from like strawberry blonde to cherry Kool-Aid red.
Yeah, and there's even maybe times where it even goes a little bit towards Ronald McDonald type colors. It does change quite a bit.
Well, maybe your definition of cherry Kool-Aid red differs from mine, Jeremiah, but that's pretty much what I meant.
Yeah, it does change quite a bit.
If we're going to literally split hairs here.
Having seen at least every episode once, probably several episodes multiple times, I've just sort of gotten used to it. Like, that's the thing. But yeah, Ryan the Lion doesn't change his look all that much. Jack is old, reliable Jack. But Mickey is, she's a trendsetter. She's trying to find her style.
I do have to push back a little on Ryan the Lion's style doesn't change all that much. And I have to because I've spoken about his wardrobe at length every single episode of the series thus far. So I'm on the record as pointing out how much his wardrobe seems to change.
Well, maybe it's more his sense of style does not seem to change.
There's always a through line.
Yeah. It's like, yep, that's a Ryan the Lion attempt.
Fair enough.
This checks out.
So my question in this next scene is, if I have the order of operations correct, and I do, Ryan and Mickey seem to want to record this TV preacher onto a VHS tape before Jack comes in and explains that this guy must be using the Sforza glove. Why did they want to record him before that?
Well, number one, I think you are misinterpreting the scene. But number two, you're really skipping over the lead here. This scene starts with Ryan and Mickey trying to get the TV to work properly. And like all 80s TVs, it is done by a combination of moving cables around while hitting the top of the TV.
Yeah, no, that was industry standard.
Did you make a note of that? For all you youngsters out there listening to this Friday the 13th podcast, you know who you are. This is how we solve technological problems in the 80s.
I didn't note banging on the television. I noted that they were trying to watch scrambled porn and that I would have to explain to a younger audience there was a time when you actually had to tune a TV, that the phrase tune in next week actually meant that literally.
Yeah, you had to tune your TV to watch it next week or else you were out of luck. It is a shot of Ryan the Lion's head completely behind his TV, unseen. He's bent over, and he's just got one pasty white hand sitting on top of the TV. And every now and then it just thrusts down upon it as he's punching the top of it. And that is how you fix a television set. I don't know. That just really jumped out to me. That is such a product of its time.
That is a sucker punch of 80s nostalgia. It's like going to the Reagan Presidential Library.
It probably wasn't even funny then, but I just found it so funny now as just a moment. But no, I don't think they were specifically trying to. I think they were, and I'm not sure if the original task was, we got a new VCR, let's get it hooked in properly, which also for you kids out there, that was a running theme, that this was a very complicated thing to do. Back then, the running sort of cliche was, can you fix the clock on your VHS player?
Can you stop it from just blinking?
12 a.m. all day. This was considered high technology for certain people back in 1987. So my thought is what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the TV to work because they're trying to hook up new appliances to it.
So it's just a test recording that happens to be useful later when Jack goes to see Jerry?
It is just a test recording. And I'll tell you what, at the time, I was almost wondering, and it could still be true, because, I mean, it's a very deliberate shot of him pushing in the tape and hitting record. It's an insert shot, so he had to go out of his way to do it. It wasn't just like background business. I kind of wondered if it wasn't Cronenberg just dropping a little personal Easter egg of self.
You'd already made Videodrome by that point.
Yeah, no, Videodrome was a few years. I think Videodrome was probably 83.
You nailed it. I had to look it up on IMDb, but I got my list right here, and yes, it was 83.
That was just a blind guess on my part.
Oh, he's too humble, folks.
So yeah, I mean, this episode would have been coming shortly after The Fly, which was, I assume, his biggest commercial. I mean, it had to be his biggest commercial success was The Fly. So he's coming from a big blockbuster horror movie to working on TV, which is not normally the way that you want your career to go in 1980s Hollywood.
Well, this show runs on a coincidence-based economy, so I'll give you that.
And that is how you would sort of do it. You would want to do a test record, and you just do it with whatever you happen to be watching in that moment. What didn't check out was Ryan DeLion's commentary on what a showman this preacher was when, he's basically just talking while sitting in a chair by himself. I don't think the actor that was playing Ryan had seen the actual footage, but he's like, oh man, wow, look at this guy. What a showman, huh? And you'd think, he'd be jumping up and down, saying hallelujah, but he's just sitting there in a chair, casually playing with his glove,
Delivering his lines like it's an all-night chat line advertisement.
Yeah. There's no gold chandeliers or gold piano playing in the background. There's no him screaming out hallelujah and then having sidekicks scream amen back at him.
No star wipes.
Nothing to really justify Ryan's description of what he's supposedly seeing on TV.
Oddly enough, it has all the uncomfortable energy of a Videodrome broadcast.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. Or of any number of Cronenberg moments where it's like an audience watching somebody speak in a very monotone way as they're delivering this news. And it's like, how does this guy maintain an audience? I don't know.
I have two things I have to say regarding the Sforza glove. Credit where it's due. Interesting that they chose Sforza. I'm probably reading way too much into this, but I feel like someone involved in the production was maybe actually into the supernatural. I don't know if there's an uncredited Dan Aykroyd screenplay out there, but I feel like there had to be someone kind of like him on the show. And it's an interesting choice that they went with Sforza, because it feels like if you were going to go Italian, you'd probably stop at Medici. But there was a Sforza family that operated out of Milan. I'm going to be very reductionist here, but let's just say they were kind of like Milan's equivalent of the Medici family.
Sure, yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. I'm sure I'm making a connection where there is none, but that's my meta headcanon, that's what was going on behind the scenes making the show. So I'll throw them a bone there. Conversely, once again, I feel like it's just a little too complicated because the lore is that the glove was made for Antonio Sforza and that he was an alchemist, but he did not make the glove. The glove was made for him by his court physician. Why that extra level of complication? Why is a physician more qualified to make a magic glove than the alchemist?
Well, he does the stitching and then the alchemist does the magic.
You got me there.
You want to make a magic glove. It's teamwork, Romeo. It's not a one-man job.
Silently supervising it all, Satan.
Again, he's been playing chess for centuries, apparently.
That's why there was only one set of footprints. Satan was carrying him.
One thing else that probably worth noting is this is the first shot where we see any of our reoccurring characters, and it's literally 25% of the show.
Well, I would go so far as to ask, I feel like there's a time jump. I feel like we're meant to believe that everything that happened before this was essentially a prologue, and that sort of the episode proper begins here with Mickey and Ryan.
Yes and no. Yes to the fact that it is a jump in time, although there's a contradiction in that. The faith does specifically say something about how his life changed 6 months ago. But later in the episode, when we come back and meet Jerry, he says, oh yeah, I've already debunked that guy. I did it about a year ago.
See, I just had canon that 6 months passed between the opening and then us seeing Mickey and Ryan and Jack, and then Jack saying, I'm going to go talk to my friend Jerry. And then another 6 months elapsed.
Well, Jerry does live on a boat, so maybe he had to wait till the boat came in. He's just standing on the shore waiting for it to dock.
Yeah, you don't understand. That's actually Antwerp Harbor. That's not made clear in the show.
Right. So, yeah. But yes, so I think the show does address it is a time passage. But no, I think it's not really a prologue because, to kind of go back to being a serialized show yet an anthology at the same time. This show's really about the faith healer and the debunker skeptic more than it is about any of our three main characters. Jack certainly has a lot of moments in this, but Ryan and Mickey they're hardly in it.
Yeah, it's an excellent point.
Yes, it is all a prologue in the sense that we don't get to our regulars, but much like a lot of the episodes, much like the majority of the episodes, it's really not so much about the regulars.
Yeah, agreed. Our heroes just show up to watch them die.
Yeah.
Look down sadly, and then move on to the next adventure.
Right. I mean, that was something that was true of this show throughout, as something that's true of shows like The X-Files throughout. And of course, that's not to dismiss the connection to the characters that we develop over time. And it's also not to dismiss the fact that you will get an episode that really does focus on that character, and all the meat of the story and the performance are about your main characters.
Yeah, Tales of the Undead was all about Ryan.
But on average, the show is really focused on the new people that you're meeting. And that's sort of what makes it an anthology type of show, even though it's done in a serialized format.
Yeah, it's an excellent point.
One other thing that I sort of found interesting in the scene was when Jack comes in, Mickey just instantly wants to change his channel. Is really upset that they're even doing this test recording and having to sit and watch this thing for 30 seconds or however long it is. Ryan sort of slightly bemused by it, a little indifferent by it, thinks that this guy is quite an entertainer. But when Jack comes in, he just sort of stops and just starts watching it, like, very adoringly, which we do establish in the show that Jack is a spiritual guy despite him being this very worldly academic. He's very much a man of the world and a man of well-read academic, expert on everything from history to anthology to anthropology to...
A true intellectual.
Yes, but also a very religious person. He's sort of the Jesuit of the group. He comes in and like, he just suddenly like does start watching it, looking at it in an adoring way, which I just kind of found interesting. That's not his first reaction, that, oh, this is some charlatan on TV. It's like, oh yeah, this is really nice, and I actually want to stop and watch this. And then obviously when he sees the glove, the mood changes.
Tonal shift.
And it was a nice performance there of him giving the shift.
Yeah, and then in this next bit, we get further evidence that this is the worst location on Earth for people with mobility issues, as we again reuse the location from earlier to see Jack being escorted by two goons down a set of concrete stairs.
So I love this scene because the way Jack is so upset about his lockpicks.
Yes, I made a note of that. That is one of the greatest lines this show has had.
And just like, oh man, like, and then even Mickey's like, what? No, and like, there's just such a, like, the level of affection this man has for his lockpick set, and just the level of, like, what are we, savages? Who does this? Who ruins a man's set of lockpicks?
All I was trying to do was break into your organization.
Him looking over them and trying to say, oh no, okay, maybe this one will be okay,
Can they be salvaged? Not so much.
Yeah, it was such a charming moment from, again, this man who's sort of the seasoned veteran, the elder statesman of this trio. But him just having like this real almost childlike affection for, oh, you broke my toys.
Yeah, he's 2 for 2 on the charm offensive here between that and watching The Preacher on TV. And it is entirely his performance that almost distracts you from realizing what a shoestring budget they must have had to essentially have to have that entire scene play out off screen and just reference what just happened.
Yes. Yeah, no, very much so. And actually, so this might be a good place to pose this question, although it's maybe the one scene that I'm least certain about on this. Some of the scenes with Ryan and Mickey, I think, was shot by second unit. 100%. Cronenberg did not shoot some of those scenes that are coming up later. I think he definitely did probably the videotape scene where they're first discovering the creature on the TV. Cronenberg probably shot and directed the scene with him going through the book and talking about the alchemist and the history of the glove and all that stuff. This scene I'm not sure about. I think maybe it's second unit. Almost because I don't know if Cronenberg would have leaned in on the comedy, the sweetness of Jack's delivery and things like that.
I'll second that because I don't know what their shot list looked like. I don't know what their storyboards were, but this is where the geography of the situation and or the timeline was broken for me. When we go from bottom of this staircase to, I think, Ryan looking somewhere kind of past the camera after mentioning that they're going to have to wait and just kind of be on the lookout. And then we cut to that two-tier fire escape shot, which is cool, but it's so wide that I didn't pick up on the fact that that was Mickey and Ryan. I thought it was what Ryan was looking at.
Oh.
Like something across the street. And then we cut back and they're like, oh, there he is. And they look down and wait, now they're on a fire escape looking down at Stuart coming out beneath them, which seems like the weirdest place in the world to track a man. There's nothing more silent than a fire escape.
I definitely wasn't confused on that being Ryan and Mickey. I wonder if maybe a part of it is just the lack of picture quality that we're watching now. But that said, I knew right away that that was Ryan and Mickey. I did, funny enough, though, because when you cut to him on the fire escape, you're not really sure what the geography was. And because the sound hasn't been remastered in any way.
Yes.
When Mickey, because they're referencing hearing some sounds, and I couldn't really tell what they were listening to. But when I think Ryan says a line that's something like, oh man, they're really going at it in there. And Mickey goes, well, yeah, but it sounds like they're almost done or something like that. And I was like, wait a minute, are they hearing people having sex in the apartment next door? It seemed like that was what those lines would match up more with.
Oh, see, my mind didn't go there at all. After Jack talking about stuff that happened off screen that we're not allowed to see because they didn't have the budget, I was just like, and once again, you're describing what we don't have the budget to film.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's the reality of it, but where my mind went, because based on those lines and based on like where they're at,
they've got a very rear window situation going on.
Yeah, they're sitting on a fire escape.
Combined with the obvious sexual tension between these cousins.
Yeah, but it gave me pause when I heard it, because again, like how daring for a TV show to do that. But it was me reading into it in a way that it wasn't. But in a way that it did seem like that's how it was written, which even makes me wonder if maybe that was something that they were going for, but then they changed it.
As long as we both stumbled on something at this moment, I'm happy.
Obviously, like when Mickey and Ryan are interacting with the Faith Healer more directly, or coming on those locations more directly, I'm going to guess that those were probably shot by Cronenberg, but I'm going to guess outside of the two scenes that we already discussed, introduced them in the shop, the later inserts where we just sort of cut back to Ryan and Mickey, I'm going to guess those were a second unit. And maybe not even in the script, maybe just even from producers' notes of saying, hey, we want to see the two regulars show up a couple more times.
You think they were reshoots?
I think they were either reshoots, or maybe it was even something that the producer might have said in the script even. Okay, yeah, this is great, but we've just gone another 15 pages without seeing Ryan and Mickey. Let's add something in here for them. And it's like, okay, great, we added that. We need to knock this out. We don't need to get everyone on Cronenberg's timeline to shoot this. We can shoot this with second unit because we're in a rush.
I would love to know the answer to that. Just to wrap up this section, we get the death of the woman in the alley with her dog out for an alley stroll when you're a middle-aged woman, as you do.
The most unsuspecting person, and she just walks right up to him in the alley, no concern.
I have to believe it's a Canadian thing, Jeremiah. It's like not locking your doors.
It was, though, she seemed like, she sort of, it's an urban environment. It seems like she almost sort of had a little bit of a
New York edge to her?
New York edge to her in a way. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But it wasn't, I'm a tough New Yorker, I'll walk up and go nose to nose with you. It was more like, I'm just going to be very oblivious of walking right up to this guy who's sort of holding back my dog. And yeah, I got to go and interact with him, and I'm going to presume the best. But I'll still sort of keep my distance, try to get close enough to grab the dog, but not like literally put myself where he could give me a full-on body hug in one move.
Suplex me.
Yeah, the cojones on her, or the lack of any fear.
Situational awareness.
Yeah, situational awareness is really the right word, 100%. Somehow this has gotten her by in her life. She looks like she's well into adulthood. So I don't know how she's survived living in this city, in this district, this long with that type of approach, but I guess it finally caught up with her on this day.
In a building whose entrance leads directly out into Crime Alley.
Yeah. Interesting choice. An interesting choice.
And speaking of interesting choices, just to get back to Cronenberg and his predilections, she dies like a catfish suffocating on a riverbank. Other characters do as well, but I feel like hers is probably the most emblematic of the type of death we keep seeing in this episode. Her tongue is kind of moving back and forth. Her cheeks keep bulging in and out. Is that a Cronenberg thing that I'm not quite as aware of?
I think so, yeah. He leans in towards weird.
Just really lingering on that sense of the body shutting down and getting weird as it dies.
Yeah, he likes weird performances. He likes weird takes on it. He likes the body just having this full-fledged reaction. If it's not going to be an over-the-top effect shot, I think he'd want the over-top in animated performances.
If the head isn't going to explode outright, then let's draw this one out.
Yeah, and her basically doing what happened to Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall when he ends up on Mars without any oxygen.
Yeah, he's Verhoving this one.
Yeah, but just all in her performance, no effects whatsoever. That's what we were going for here. And she did probably exactly what he wanted.
And he's just off screen like a local news producer making the pulling taffy gesture.
Yep, keep it going.
Last note on her specifically, although maybe you think this applies to one of the other many gruesome deaths in this episode. Did you almost think that she looked a bit like one of the creatures from They Live, if they were less blue and more flesh-colored?
I mean, yeah, I didn't necessarily think of that specifically, just...
I'm not saying it's a conscious homage. I just thought that she in particular reminded me of one of those aliens.
Well, it definitely was an homage, because I think They Live also came out, and without looking it up, I think it was 1987 also. So... wouldn't have been in the public consciousness yet. I doubt if the filmmakers working on this TV show would have seen it.
Maybe they were shooting on the same set. Maybe he ran across Carpenter around the lot.
Also very possible. Or else these particular effects had been sitting out in the sun too long. So Friday the 13th's like, don't throw them away. We'll take them.
We got Cronenberg. He'll use them. That guy will use anything.
Yeah. No, definitely not a reference. And no, I didn't necessarily draw that connection, but I can see it. To me, it fit in with Cronenberg, at least Cronenberg on a budget, Cronenberg on a more of a time crunch.
Yeah, good on him for slumming it on this one.
I'm sure he would have liked to have added some boiling effects of the skin still doing more active stuff and moving rather than just sort of being deformed and laying there still. He would have liked to have probably had it turning more into liquid and doing more on the screen.
They all are subtly different. I'll give them that.
Yeah, none of them look like something that I wouldn't have expected, especially in like early 70s and 80s Cronenberg projects. Even then, you know, like he obviously was able to do more because you could just take more time on a film set versus a TV set. These would be the background zombies in a Cronenberg film if Cronenberg was filming zombies. You know, in a way, like actually the creatures in The Brood kind of have a similar look in terms of like the face structure. They were more flesh toned. Whereas these are more, like you said, like the They Live colors. But, yeah, I think it fits in.
If you like the horror genre as much as we do, you can preview the horror comic book Requiem for a Psychopath right now, for free, at the Inner Demon Entertainment website. Imagine a world in which horror film slashers are real. Then imagine a troubled teen bringing one out of retirement to help him take revenge on his bullies. It was written by me and drawn by friend of the show, Stephen Yu. Again, that's Requiem for a Psychopath on the Inner Demon Entertainment website. And, if you dig it, please either review and rate it 5 stars on Amazon, or don't rate and review it at all. Ratings of less than 5 stars send the algorithm into murder mode for some reason. Thanks. I hope you enjoy it. Some shows have a monster of the week. This series has a curio of the week. And so do we. Believe me, no one paid us for the following endorsements, and once they hear the show, it's more likely they'll pay us to retract them. We just want to share some cool things with you while simultaneously using our platform to give a little free promotion to those without a massive advertising budget. Jeremiah, what is your curio of the week?
My curio of the week is a website called flickchart.com. This could be old news to some people, but I discovered this not that long ago. I have a long history of always looking for movies that are considered to be highly regarded or ranked that I haven't seen before, and over the years I've worked off of various AFI lists and list of Oscar winners. But I discovered this website. It has a very, very extensive movie ranking system of tens of thousands of movies. Obviously, there are other sites that sort of rate and rank movies like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb being the more popular ones. But this one sort of really seems to have more depth and more distinction in the rankings. You know, a lot of times the IMDb, it's just sort of based off of ratings or based off of an individual personal list if it gets published.
So this is curated? This isn't open source like, say, Wikipedia?
I don't participate in it. I just sort of steal the movie list ideas in terms of things I'm looking for. But yeah, I think there are some sort of upvoting and downvoting. I did notice when I first discovered the site that like some of the movies that came out that year seemed lower than where you think they would land eventually. And then I think as time passes, they find their way to a natural place where they're going to probably live for a long time. But it is extensive. They said it has tens of thousands of titles. You know, Rotten Tomatoes, for instance, often favors newer stuff. As you try to get into older, less commercial movies, it took a while for them to even get listed in the site at all. And even now, they're a little bit less favored by the system itself. This, from what I can tell, it's international films, it's popular commercial films, it's critically based films, are all ranked in together, and they all sort of seem to find a natural spot. It doesn't seem to necessarily prioritize English only, although a lot of the top ones are English only, but mixes in a good mashup of international films, a good mashup of things that would just be popular with audiences, and combine that with the critical consensus. So this is just a masterpiece.
And how did the search features work? Can I search for horror films? Can I search for movies starring Kurt Russell? How granular does the search become?
That's a great question, because that's really the main reason why I'm recommending it on this podcast in particular, is that you can really break it down.
You think fans of Friday the 13th, the series, might be into niche subjects?
They just might be into something a little off kilter. Yeah, for sure. The genre one, obviously you have the big bucket of horror. That basically includes anything that's marked as horror, but then it can go into way more specifics, like you can just get J-horror, or you can get zombie films specifically ranked, or you can get vampire films specifically ranked.
Zombie films set on trains.
Yeah, I mean, some of it does get really specific, like slasher films, if that's specifically what you're looking for. With Halloween coming up, you know, I try to watch a lot of horror movies during October.
Yes, you do.
Every year I want to be sure to get something I've not seen, but I usually try to find some hidden gem. And this list, the past couple of years, has really been a go-to, where I'll basically grab the top 1,000 horror movies and scratch off all the ones that I own or all the ones that I've seen, and then look at what's left over and try to pick something to see if there's a real hidden gem there.
Wow, if you can scratch off all the ones you own and there's still something left, that has got to be an exhaustive list.
It is, because as you know, I collect physical media very actively.
Vast, people. Picture the end of Indiana Jones. That warehouse gives you some idea.
I think on Blu-ray and 4K, I have maybe somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000 titles, and then double that in things that are still on DVD.
I'm sure you give Robert Meyer Burnett a run for his money.
I do the best I can.
I know it's your ongoing war with all Roberts.
Yes, indeed.
Believe me, I am aware.
You can also search by director, you can search by actor, you can search by decade. Rankings are always going to be a little bit questionable for everyone. It's a very subjective thing, but I find on average it's as good as any other ranking list that I've seen.
The folks at home don't know you, but Jeremiah has fantastic taste in film, so I completely back this play.
Just as an example, here are the top 10 in horror: Alien, The Shining, Aliens, Psycho, Jaws, Shaun of the Dead, The Thing, Bride of Frankenstein, Predator, and The Exorcist.
Technically, Jeremiah, Bride of Frankenstein is a comedy and Aliens is an action film, so now I'm not so sure.
Yeah. True. That is one thing about the website that is true, though, is it doesn't necessarily rank it based on how good of a film it is in that genre, just that it's part of that genre and it thinks it's this good of a film.
Hey, no system is perfect.
Right.
Sounds pretty good to me, though. I like that list.
I found it very solid. I know I personally have seen all those top 10s of probably anyone's list. So I'm trying to find the top 100 horror movies and trying to find the 5 or 6 films in that list that I haven't seen yet.
Top 100 or top 1,000, Jeremiah?
And eventually it ends up becoming top 1,000. Yeah, I literally do at Halloween take the top 1,000, start crossing stuff off. And I'll end up with several dozen, though, that I have not seen. But It's been super handy, and if you're a film lover, if you're a genre lover, if you have interest in specific directors, if you have interest in specific actors or specific eras, you really want to learn more about the 1940s and check out film noir, or you want to find out more about Italian horror or Japanese horror or even a more obscure subgenre, this is the website that will help you get started on that journey and hopefully start off with some solid choices at the top of that list.
In honor of my guest this episode, who's not only a physical media aficionado, but an action figure connoisseur to boot, I dug deep and came up with the closest offering I can think of that still makes sense for this segment. That is all to say that my curio of the week is the Mad Scientist Monster Lab. If you weren't into children's toys in the mid to late 80s, there was a fleeting series of related Mattel products released under the Mad Scientist banner just a hair before the premiere of Friday the 13th, the series. In my humble opinion, the one to rule them all was the Monster Lab. Were one so inclined, one could argue you created a temporary action figure by molding a clay or Play-Doh-like substance onto the plastic skeleton of a monster. Once your pride in your monster had waned and you'd grown weary of its meager amusements, you would lower it into a vat of water into which you had previously dumped a packet of theoretically non-caustic chemicals, and the monster's flesh would bubble away until all that remained was the skeleton and a vat full of water that, in retrospect, probably should not have been reintroduced into our local municipalities' water management systems. It was simple, it was stupid, it was probably semi-dangerous, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Truly, when I croak Rosebud on my deathbed, rest easy in the knowledge this humble children's diversion is what I'll be secretly referring to. After a fresh establishing shot of curious goods that leaves me half surprised the antique store itself isn't riddled with pox or lesions, the show attempts to convince us yet again these two cousins are dating by seating them side by side on an antique couch that could easily accommodate another person and possibly two Ryan the Lions. The cherry on top is that they both have an arm around the other, so Mickey has clearly been worn down over time. The point of the scene is to deliver exposition no one asked for. That the glove absorbs an affliction, amplifies it, and passes it on. Hey, Friday, we've been watching. We got that part. Care to set up how long the wielder of the glove has to pass on the affliction, and or what happens if they don't? You know, invaluable information that would establish tension for later scenes. It's also here to impart that Jack has a kooky friend, Jerry, our favorite religious debunker, who might be able to help, but the cousin thing completely distracts from all of that. The show apparently heard my criticism about all the scenes set in a Bowery and overreacted, because it turns out Jerry lives at an industrial harbor on Kaiser Soze's boat. One presumes this is the payoff to Jack's line about previously being engaged by the Merchant Marines. One must also presume, once discharged from the Merchant Marines, they get to keep the ship. That or the debunking business is booming. The flip side of the mountain of production value this location affords is that the interiors seem to be lit, at least in part, by the ship's actual lights, often leaving Jack overlit and Jerry underlit. In an attempt to persuade Jerry to go after Stewart again, Crackerjack Marshak plays a tape of Stewart sensually caressing a skeletal man in a long-sleeved shirt paired against short shorts, who appears to be dying of a wasting disease, but who's actually being cured of the leg brace he wears, I guess? The creep factor of all this is off the charts, and I'll be here all day if I try to discuss it all. So let's just say it's, once again, simultaneously overly complicated, yet insufficiently explained to ground this premise in a believable reality. The function of the tape should be to prove to Jerry that Stewart is now demonstrating a healing power that can't be denied, perhaps healing an ailing patient in a hospital setting, surrounded by doctors and scientists, but nope. It's just Stewart and Brother John alone in Stewart's apartment, and Brother John doesn't even demonstrate that he's healed. Not that a demonstration would prevent him from being a stooge anyway. All the tape proves is that Stewart is still operating, which Jerry already knew. Although Jerry and Jack are diametrically opposed regarding the supernatural, Jerry claims he's seen things too, then performs the world's most ambiguous spoon-bending trick. So, do you or don't you believe in magic, dude? Understandably, Jerry is entirely unconvinced by Jack's arguments and protestations, but let's just headcanon that Jerry agrees to help Jack for old time's sake, even though that simple, cogent explanation isn't proffered. Before leaving this scene, I have to broach Jerry's claim that Stewart lifted a line from a classic comic book. It's an interesting detail, and like Ryan the Lion's love of Green Lantern, further evidence the writers were into comics. But this line isn't delivered in temporal proximity to the line in question, leaving me baffled as to which line is being referred to. I don't recall Flame On, or Shazam, or It's Clobberin' Time, so what classic comic book is he referencing? Fortunately for all concerned, Stewart is petty enough to grant Jerry entree to his private residence just to rub his success in Jerry's face. I suppose this tracks, as Stewart is vain enough to wear a violet tie and liturgical vestments at home. Why the gang couldn't have functionally achieved the same goal by telling him Mickey, or more probably Ryan, was a huge fan who wanted to meet him privately, I'm not sure. Jerry and Stewart proceed to have a contest to see who can speak the most faintly that makes the distant sirens and floorboard creak over one of Jerry's lines all the more pronounced. Further evidence of the run and gun, no second takes demands of this production. I'd wager working on this show must have provided approximately the same level of excitement as Saturday Night Live. Given that we'll soon learn Jerry is dying, he's demonstrating an insane amount of restraint or denial here by not simply grabbing the glove from Stewart's palm. Yeah, he's just kind of holding the glove and caressing it. It's weird. Then healing himself and killing Stewart. I concede when Stewart says, "There's a power that is greater than both of us, that is running through me, blessing me." I didn't expect Jerry's dry, acerbic retort of, "Yeah, it's called greed." It's a great line, well delivered. I'm just not sure it motivates Jerry's transition from ottoman to couch. Wait, why was he ever sitting on an ottoman and not the antique chair behind it? Doesn't matter. Luckily, Stewart accepts Jerry's challenge to a final showdown later on Jerry's home turf, in private, on an unknown third party, without any questions, all for bragging rights. Cutting back to Jerry's cargo vessel / home, Jack and Jerry are just chillin'. I realize they've both donned new clothes, so we're meant to understand it's a new day, but it sure feels like Jack just hung out while Jerry ran off to have the meeting with Stewart, all during the same night. Only now does Jack ask if Jerry has found a stooge for Stewart to heal. Kinda thought you'd handle that, Jack. Or, better yet, don't involve anyone else, since, at some point, you're going to have to take that glove by force. But Jerry reveals he's found someone who's actually dying to play the role, because if the glove really can heal, why not let it heal? A compelling argument. So Jack explains for a second time that there's a price that must be paid for using the glove, only now revealing the price is death. Jerry reflects for 7/10 of a second and declares he's cool with that because the terminal patient is him. The drama of all this is somewhat undercut by the fact Jerry delivers these lines while lying on his Spartan single bed. Finally sitting up, Jerry raises his shirt to reveal he's got a severe case of chronitis and is about 6 months away from moving into that cabin from the Brood. Before Jack can process the news, Jerry draws his Merchant Marine service pistol and waxes poetic about the irony of being saved by a faith healer. Wow, can't trust the faith healer or the debunker. Friday, you're really both sidesing this argument. Okay, so we're back from commercial break with a scene that I'm just going to call Cousins on a Couch.
They are sitting very awkwardly together, all squeezed in on basically one side of the couch with their arms behind the other person's back.
It's not a love seat. There's space for a third person.
I think on some level the idea is that they're maybe comforting each other from the trauma of Dog Lady's corpse, but they're not exactly like really consoling each other.
I know you've seen this many, many times, but try to mentally separate yourself out and imagine an objective third party watching this episode without the benefit of any others for the very first time. And this is the image they saw. Would they arrive at the conclusion these two were anything except a couple?
Or that they're will they, won't they, like they're flirting with it, but they haven't established it.
There's a sexual tension here.
There's sexual tension, 100%. I think somebody at some point involved in the show, and I have no idea who, had said that part of the reason why they established them being cousins was because they didn't want to fall into the trap of will they, won't they? Because things like moonlighting.
Whoops.
But they instantly go against that at every turn. I feel like there's probably a behind the scenes conflict. One person was like, yeah, I don't want the show to go this way. The other person was like, well, yeah, the show has to go this way because it's TV and this is what's popular.
I mean, to be fair, this was only a few years after Jedi. Maybe someone pointed to Star Wars and said, hey, I guess people are cool with this.
I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. That is something that even at the time
Like, as a kid, did this boggle your mind watching it?
It was confusing. I don't know that it boggled my mind. I don't know that I necessarily picked up on it at the same degree because I was pretty young. I was prepubescent watching this. I didn't pick up on all the innuendo, which is layered throughout the show.
And how?
But yeah, the dynamics between the two were always odd. Yeah, it's still a head scratcher. And as I said, at this point, I've seen every episode, and it did not get clarified having watched every episode. You just kind of gotta go, well, it's never gonna make sense, so oh well.
You know, I'll concede, Jeremiah, that the show did break new ground in some respects, but I'm sorry, this was not one of them. Thank God.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've not watched some of those old 1950s westerns or Little House on the Prairie or things like that, but was there maybe cousin romances in some of those shows, perhaps? I mean, if you go back, like, before the 20th century, you read your classic literature, and it's a lot of times it is people, like, falling for their cousins. It's definitely creepy in my mind, but maybe different strokes for different folks. I don't know. As I said, I think I've read somewhere that, like, that is something that maybe the original writer or showrunner, that's why he put it in that they were cousins, because he did not want them to be flirtatious.
Then the actors got to set, and the sheer animal magnetism of John D. LeMay just won Louis Roby over.
Well, and for whatever reason, especially back then, in the 80s and 90s, audiences would just ship characters. Like, they just liked to do that. I don't think it was necessarily the intention for the X-Files to want those two characters to get together from a show perspective.
Really? That feels like a bold stance.
I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think that was intentional. I think audiences started demanding it to the point where it's like, well, we got to go with it. There's too much fan fiction around it.
I'll be honest, I don't know much about the history of shipping. I actually thought it was a fairly new phenomenon, but I have seen the first episode of The X-Files. I was actually kind of stunned that there's a scene in which Mulder has to inspect Scully. Everything just clicked into place, where I'm like, okay, of course the fans wanted to constantly ship these two. The show actually established it in the very first episode.
You know, I remember that scene. I don't remember even what the plot of the first episode was.
You want me to edit that out of the record?
No, we can leave it in. That's fine.
You don't remember the plot of the episode, just that Scully got inspected. Okay.
I mean, I do remember that, but I also think, I don't think the intention was this show's going to end with them together. Like Seinfeld, where, yeah, we'll play with it, and maybe even less so than Seinfeld, because in Seinfeld it was established that they had dated. Like, that was the original premise of their relationship.
I don't know if Seinfeld's a great example, only because Larry David was basing especially early episodes on events from his real life versus something that's entirely fictional.
Well, true, but I guess my point is just that audiences wanted for Jerry and Elaine to get together by the end. Despite that whole show showing why that should not happen, there were people that were like, that's how you should end the show.
And see, that boggled my mind when I got to early episodes of that show, having seen so many of the later episodes. I always got the impression Elaine was just one of the guys, more or less. It was only much later when I finally saw some of the early episodes, I was like, interesting. They actually had a relationship back then that I never picked up on from later episodes.
Well, no, I agree. Like, the bulk of the show and the most popular part of the show, she is one of the guys, exactly that. But despite the fact that even audiences that really weren't watching the first two seasons, most likely.
So it's really X-Files all over again, where the show kind of establishes a relationship at the beginning that it actually abandons as it goes on to have them just be platonic friends.
Right. But with X-Files, they did end up putting them together as a couple.
I did not know that.
I don't think that's where it jumped the shark, but it was part of a couple moves that jumped the shark on that show. Yeah, shipping is a thing. Shipping's been a thing for a long time. The idea of if you stick a man and woman on screen together, audiences just naturally wanted to ship them was very present in the 80s.
So where was it happening?
Fan letters were a thing.
So it wasn't so much a case of fan fiction so much as letter writing campaigns.
I think it was more letter writing campaigns and more just water cooler talk. People were just saying, we really want Seinfeld and Elaine to get together, and that should have been ending the show. We really want Ross and Rachel to come back together again, even though this show has proven that they are a terrible couple.
That's funny. I used to actually tell Hill Street, one of my explanations for why I think I like Seinfeld so much more than Friends was the fact that, yes, there are relationships in Seinfeld, but it's not a show where all the characters are dating each other. They're just a circle of friends. Ironically, they're more friends than the friends are because they date each other, other than the ones that are brother-sister. I hope. Please tell me those two don't date each other.
No, Ross and Monica never hook up, thankfully. But that was also a problem I had with Friends. I kind of was okay initially with the Ross and Rachel idea because, okay, you got 6 people. Yeah, if you have a friend group of a certain size, probably somebody's...
Sooner or later, some of them are going to hook up.
Or somebody's going to crush on somebody at the very least. But the idea that this message of, well, if you're a man and she's a woman, it has to become sexual and lustful and romantic by nature. You can't just all be friends.
And we're going to play out every single combination thereof that we can.
Right. But it's what audiences were demanding in a way that the networks and producers were aware of. They end up folding in.
Oh, it's fine for a certain type of person, I suppose. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I had exactly 4 words for notes on this scene, and it was cousins on a couch. Did you have anything else?
It would have made more sense if maybe he was just consoling her.
Sure. A reassuring hand on the shoulder.
Reassuring hand on the shoulder. She's maybe leaned in because she's still sort of horrified and traumatized by seeing this dead body that looks so gross and disgusting from the body horror of it. But the way that they are both kind of half consoling one another was just odd. It was just an odd placement.
I'll be honest, man. I have the image up while we're discussing it so I can scroll through the episode silently in the background. And I swear, given how dark they both are, it looks like she's sitting on his lap.
Oh.
I know she isn't, but I got to move on, man.
Yeah.
The next major scene, we learn that Jerry lives on Kaiser Sose's boat.
Yeah, Jerry's on a boat, and...
No, not a boat. Because if you say a boat, people are picturing, like, a houseboat or something down at the marina. He's got a frigate or something.
Yeah, it's like a full freight boat, for sure.
This thing crashes through ice around Greenland.
There's going to be a lot to talk about this boat, and I might save some of it, because every time we come to the boat, it sort of builds on itself as a location. I mean, I think it's interesting, and it's actually like something where it's like, okay, if Jerry's going around the world debunking things, does he take the boat with him? And if so, how does Jack know where it's docked? This friend who he's not seen for a long time,
Is he independently wealthy? Because I get the sense that debunking is his job because that's how TV works, but that can't be right. That's got to be a hobby. What does this man do?
He could be a debunker. Like, there were actually some successful,
If you're talking about the Amazing Randy or something, I was always under the impression, in addition to being a magician, not that that's the highest paying gig, I guess I kind of figured he was independently wealthy. I could be entirely wrong on that.
I mean, I think if you're publishing books on debunking and things like that back then, you'd actually make quite a career. You'd get TV fees for appearing on talk shows and things of that nature. Is that the level Jerry's at? I'm not sure.
You definitely won't succeed debunking conspiracies these days, I'm afraid to say.
No, you might make more money spreading them.
Exactly. Bunking is where the money's at.
If it's a rundown freighter, which sort of...
Doesn't look that rundown, man. It looks like it's in pretty good shape.
I don't know. How does that compare to house prices these days? I don't know.
I've never been in the market for a freighter. I will concede that point. But he also doesn't seem to have any crew.
He doesn't have any crew.
This was 1987. It's not like this whole thing was automated.
When Jack comes over, he just walks in. Granted, these things I doubt have doorbells or anything, so I don't know how you would really announce that you're here to visit somebody at their freighter house.
Well, semi-form, I think, Jeremiah.
Yeah. The cut is he is already inside. The door is already closed behind him. He is walking down the stairs when Jerry glances over and notices a man walking down his stairs into his living area.
Well, they didn't want to spend the 3 minutes that it takes to seal the doors on a ship like this.
No, actually, when we do eventually see it open, it's pretty easy. It takes 10 seconds. There are multiple people that enter in and just are shown already 3 steps down, already the door closed behind them, completely unannounced, and then being like, hey, Jerry. And that's what Jack does here. Maybe boat life's a little bit more like the suburbs and people weren't locking their doors back then or something, but...
Especially this being Canada. If you don't lock your normal house, you definitely don't lock your houseboat.
But bunkers are maybe at a higher level. Like, that is maybe the gated community level of boating. It's where...
If you're going to live on something this size, you can't just park it down at the marina. He's got to be taking up industrial dock space just to be hanging out here.
As I said, I kind of admire the uniqueness of it in the sense that we're painting a world where Jerry is a character and he's got history and there's a story here and we're not going to get it. But It does raise more questions.
Show always
More-
is raising more questions. Every answer comes with 10 more questions.
Yeah.
Jack shows Jerry a VHS tape of a man that looks like he has some kind of wasting disease or eating disorder or something. All the other body horror in this, and really, I would say pretty much all Cronenberg films, for me at least, is more or less fun. This, though, I feel like I'm seeing a man who died 2 weeks after they filmed this.
I focused on a different element of this.
Let's talk about yours, because honestly, this actually makes me uncomfortable and almost feels exploitative.
Well, I might make you even more uncomfortable with where I was focused on this.
That is your lot in life. Let's have it.
The faith healer almost seems like he's molesting him.
Oh, God. Oh, is that where you're going? Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, I forgot. The hole gets deeper. That's my next note. Yes.
He is caressing his entire body in a way that is very unsettling.
I think it's safe to say there's a power dynamic problem when one of you thinks the other can save your life.
Oh, big time. And it's completely unnecessary. He's rubbing it up and down his chest, and then to really punctuate it,
Here it comes. Yeah, what happens then, Jeremiah?
there's a shot where he jumps to molesting his leg that's just inserted in and unnecessary.
And it doesn't help that they're sitting on the world's most sensual divan.
Yeah.
Why is this happening here, Jeremiah? I don't know if this is meant to be Stewart's really nice place or the dude's place, but why is this not happening in a revival? Did the production just run out of time and money to keep filming with that location? Or any location, anything that resembled the church, which obviously this episode has some trouble with, but you know what I'm saying. Why isn't there any kind of crowd or just some kind of backdrop with, what do you need? You need some fake stained glass and a cross. That's all you need.
I mean, we're just coming in for the molesting hour with Stuart Faithhealer.
Yes, this looks like cable access.
Seems to be what this program must be every week. Yeah.
I understand that revival shows, they might not have the best production value, but this is just filmed in some dude's apartment.
Yeah, it's really creepy, dude.
Oh, yeah. If they cut away from this insert back to James Woods watching this in Videodrome, I wouldn't bat an eye.
When you actually go to the next cut, it is the faith healer. It's him caressing the glove. There is sort of a pseudo-sexual thing going on. It could probably easily get past a censor on the page. It's maybe not even there, but you're really skirting a line that as you're watching this critically, wow, that is really bold and creepy in ways that you would not have expected that aren't necessary for the plot of the story.
Not at all.
But it does give you that feeling that Cronenberg and the show itself probably is happy that you're getting from this, that this is weird and it's wrong.
It's wrong. It's like against society.
What the heck am I watching? What is this?
It actually kind of is a callback to Cataracts in a Wheelchair, because I believe the explanation for what this man is suffering from has something to do with a brace that Stewart picks up at one point and chucks to the floor.
Yeah, but it could be that maybe his bones are withering away or something. I don't know.
Probably has cataracts too.
A lot of cataracts going around.
Like you're saying, though, it's the unanswered questions and the number of conflicting ailments that make this all the stranger.
And also, how soon does he have to get rid of this thing before it really hurts him?
Whether Stewart wants to or not, he just healed the man by touching him. That means that he basically needs to jump up off that couch and run off and touch someone else immediately. And he's not doing that. That's why the show throws me for a loop sometimes, and I forget that they establish in text one thing, but then they show you something else that contradicts that.
Well, you know, I mean, he desperately wants to get up and run off and touch somebody, but he's in the middle of doing his sweet, sweet caressing where he just can't break away. So maybe he's being pulled by two different forces. I don't know.
I see. Once again, uncomfortable sexual tension. That's 2 in the last 7 minutes.
Yes. Which, by the way, very Cronenberg. So
Stop. If I had $1 for every time you said that. Oh, you were expecting us to at least wrap up the scene before ending this podcast? No dice. Not with all we have to say about Jerry's ambiguous spoon-bending demonstration. So join us for that and our crystal ball predictions, for which I figured out a way for Jeremiah to make a prediction, despite the fact he was gazing into the past. Speaking of predicting the future, YouTube is a fickle and capricious god, so watch some episodes of Friday the 13th, the series, while you still can, for we never know what the future might hold. Thanks for listening, everyone. We know you have a lot of choices when choosing a Friday the 13th the Series podcast, and we sincerely thank you for choosing ours. Special thanks to Joshua Romeo for original music and to Stephen Yu for original art. And be sure to check out the Joe on Joe podcast, the only podcast where Joe Schlepsky discusses G.I. Joe. If you want to support our show, you can leave a review and rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. If you want an occasional update on our projects, you can sign up for our newsletter at the Inner Demon Entertainment website. And if you want to complain about social media with us on social media, you can find links on our website. And always remember what Carl said to Frylock. It don't matter. None of this matters. Good night, everybody.